And this is what I got for a few hours. And it's not going to take a lot of time for me, but I don't want to create this, step by step, because it's not a lesson from compositing that's so fast. And another thing that sometimes compositing stuff, all those color correction, grading and masking, all the stuff is take too many times. So if I will record this, it will take like a few hours. And I'm not sure that this will be interesting for someone, especially for those who doesn't know Houdini, doesn't know a Nuke. So I just want to show you step by step what I did, and you can do the same in Nuke if you work in Nuke or in any software packages, in any compositing packages you work with, if you are. So what I had is my static image, the same image I use for rendering in a backplate. And you can see this is high-res image, but what I want to do, I want to, my format, root format is full HD, 1080. And I transform this image, as I said in my first lesson, I want to rescale this a little bit to better matching the background. So I have a reformat to make it HD 1080. And if you look on the color of this picture, some of my clients said, like to say, this very happy picture. In our case, we need to make it more unhappy because we have, like a war or something, because we have a fire and smoke on a ship. It was attacked by something or someone. So I want to make a gradient, some grade for this picture first. And the reason for that, because when we apply some CG image on the backplate, on the live plate, we're not doing nothing. We're doing nothing with this clean plate. Oh, sorry. We're not correcting the live plate because it's one of well, mainly, with 99%. We do nothing with the background, and we apply our CG on this background to match with the color, with the black and white points and all other stuff. So we combine CG to the background. So in this case, I want to correct this image to make the look I want, and then I will apply a grading and color correction for my CG renders to match those elements to the background. So that's why I'm working fast with this. And what I'm doing, I'm cut those areas which I don't need to use, in fact, and make some color correction. So if you look on the final color correct, I make it less saturated, less contrast, and add a little bit more bluish tint. You can see here on the grade node with the white point, I add more red colors rather than blue, so you can see it's more, we can open this color wheel or grade white point. You can see that we add more yellow and red colors. And what does it mean for those who know, or for those who doesn't know? The white point works like if you add more hot colors, more yellow colors, it will create or add more bluish tint. If we add more red colors to the white point, or the cyan in this case, we will add more green colors. So it's working like in invert mode. The same stuff with the black point, but with the black point, I just slightly, you can see it's very slight effect, make it a little bit more brighter, just a little bit more brighter, so it's not such very dark in this area. And before I did this, I cleaned up and contrast, so it's a little bit bigger the first, and then after my grade node, you can see after the contrast, it's very, very high contrast. And that with the color correction, I again, I decrease contrast. So just, it's when you try to create something, you don't know the final result. You just try to do the first thing, then another one and another one. So the step by step. And yeah, I understand that except of the two color correction, I can use just one of those, but as always, I just look on this picture, said, okay, more contrast, then okay, less contrast. So sometimes can look like this. So I decrease saturation, decrease the contrast a bit. And in a contrast model, I again add a little bit more red colors, and in this case you will add more red, as you can see, because it's very high contrast blue picture, and I add a little bit more red colors for here, and in a gamma just a tiny bit of bluish tint. So that's what I had for my background picture, and I transform it and merge. I can show it how it looks. I merge this stuff one into another, and it's look like this. So with the merging, I use the mask, like this mask, to better combination. You know, I won't see this area. That's why I'm not worried about this line for the water. I don't worry about this transition, we can see it, but I won't see this on my final image. If I will, I should remove this stuff, maybe with the more bigger blue for my mask or something. So what I did next, let me turn off all those guys to better see what is going on there. So yeah, and that's my image. If you look on the render, this is my render with the shadow from and reflection from my ship and a reflection from the fire, and basically the water surface. So what I did in this case, well, I used the mask again to combine. Like, I want to leave those reflections from the ground, all the buildings, the mountains. So I add a very blurry mask. You can see it here, very blurry mask, to match my waves with the background. So you can see there is still some reflections from the waves, but rather with this we have some reflections we had to have from that area. Okay, so what I did from here, in a shuffle node, I take a direct refraction. So it's looking like this, and I don't like to use this very bright area, and sometimes it's over bright, so I'm cut this area from the image, and then I use the reflection, the direct reflection pass, and again I use the from node, which can, you know, just to cut some elements from here, but with some mix. So this is an original plate, this with cutting reflection. So I remove some of those reflections, but just on this area, using the mask, and then apply some gradient node, actually, if you look at the final result. So this grade node, where is my final? Here you go. So with this grade node, you can see that make it very dark, but the reason why I'm doing it, because I add with the merge node after that, add my direct reflection. So we can use even this point here, because I'm twice extrude this reflection from there. And now with the grade node, it's not such bright, and you can see the difference. I just want to add a little bit more contrast with applying just this reflection. So here you go, and then I create a luminance mask just for those areas near the ship, because they were too bright sometimes. So I apply color correction. It's simple desaturation, because it was very, like an orange, and apply the gain to add in the high contrast areas more bluish tint, again to remove a very bright orange tint. And that's what's happened here. You can see it's slightly changing. So there's very yellow, it's not an orange, it's a yellow color. So I make it more like less hot, add a little bit of bluish tint, and it became more interesting. So here's the difference. If you remove this disable, you can see it's over bright areas here we remove and apply a proper correction, and I create more darker waves. So if we look on the brightness of this water, we can see that by default when we make a render, it looks like it should be. The brightness is correct, but I want to make it more darker. In fact, I just want to do this. So I can leave this as it is, so I can remove this not you, remove this gray node, and here we have the same color. And some of you can say that, okay, this is better than this, but it's just up to you, and I decided to make it more darker to make this picture less funny, as I said. And another thing I do here, I add here is actually I clear this mask. This is our smoke. So let me back here and make it. Let's leave this mask. And okay, because it's all over, let me change this and choose undo. Okay, something like that. So, or in fact, let's talk about ship first, and then we go to the smoke. So let's turn off the smoke. Here's our ship. Again, let's turn off all those guys. And this is how we see the render. We can see that there's a lot of reflections, and just in this area we don't have fire in reflection. All those areas are pretty dark because there's a lot of shadows from the smoke and many bright areas from the fire. So here's how it's looking. And definitely it's not the best idea to leave this ship as it is. So I make a color correction with the smoke. So I add a smoke to the ship because it's not a good idea make a color correction for the smoke without color correcting the ship. So let's see, guess that here's my fire. Let me just show you step by step what I did. So I'm just make a dot here. And here how it's looking just for the rendering. So this is the clear render for the smoke and clear render for the ship. And the first thing I want to do is create some smoke adjustment for this. So what I did, I separate my two different lights, is the sunlight direct and the skylight direct, and combine those elements to get just a smoke. So this is just a smoke without any kind of volume light. So we can take just this element and remove the volume light. We can separate it using this node, the shuffle node, and minus this. You can have the same, but I prefer to use this. So I apply I add two different lights, and that's what I had. And we lose some alpha, so I copy alpha from original image to make the original alpha back. Then create a gray node, for the how to apply better like this, to get a more color look like a background. I using the gray node, again the white point, to add more red colors. This means that it will go to the cool bluish tint, and with the black point just do a slight changing. You can see it slightly change, make it a little bit more brighter. And with the color correction, not too many, just increase the contrast just a little bit. It's for the smoke, so I'm not applying any kind of volume light. Then I take my volume light, let's now connect it over here, I guess. So this is like another branch. Okay, so here we have a volume light, just a volume light pass. And using the luminance keyer, I grab the alpha channel for the very, very bright areas over there. So if you look on the original render, we can see that there's a lot of information. We have brightness over 16 in the red channel. So if we decrease the gamma or decrease the f-stops, you can see that we have all those details inside. The brightness for the rendering from the shader is pretty big. So I remove all not such bright areas using the luminance keyer, and using the grade node, I apply the white point, make it less brighter, and color correction to again go from the yellow color. It's very no yellow. I want to make it more like orange, more red color. So it decreases saturation, increase some contrast, which you can see causing very big values in this. You can see it's sometimes it show me like 80, I guess. Okay, so 50, 60 is very bright areas, and decreasing the gain a little bit. And then the result of my merging, so I apply my smoke on the background and my fire to this smoke. But you can see that we lose the middle fire, and the reason for this is the rotor I add here. So I select this area and this area. And there is a very interesting option how we can apply the same simulation, the same rendering without the fire. Let me show. I will apply my, just add the smoke to the background, to my ship. And what I can do, I can remove the actually reflection from my from the water, and I can remove reflection from the ship, and we will have the scene, without the fire. Actually, we can do this because we have a separate layer. And what is good in Houdini, when we render out using these settings, we can not just make fire less intensive, we can simply remove this fire. But I like how it looks, and I back this fire, but just for this area and this area I will leave with the smoke. I will plus this later. So another thing is using the color correction, I increase the gamma and increase the gain to add more cool tones, so more bluish tones here, and add the middle area with a little bit more intensive from my volume light. So you can see this area is just an alpha channel, and I apply, so it's looking like a mask. So I take my volume light, apply a glow to this light, just a tiny bit of saturation with 15 size, and then I merge this glow with the final result in this area. So I use this alpha channel as a mask. So you can see that we have this nice less fire in this area. Is not such intense. I want to just create dependencies. If you want to do this, you just remove this guy and you have the same area, the same intensity for all those areas. But it's up to you. I just decide to make it a little bit less intense, to make more like a random or something. So that's what we have with the fire and the smoke. So it's still very intensive, and I play many time I spent to reduce such a huge brightness for those areas. The thing is, this fire is like a flat, it doesn't have a deep. If you look on this fire, we have a gradient, we can play with this, but it less intense, maybe add a little bit more contrast. And this area is fine. I like the contrast between the fire and the smoke. This nice transition, some smoke from here, but in this area we should play a little bit. And sometimes to add depth to this element, I create two different sources. One source creating the fire and the smoke, and create another one source which is a little bit bigger than the first one, just with the smoke simulation. Not such dense, with less density, and it's create like a gradient between the fire and the smoke, and the volume light create a nice transition and nice like a tune for the fire. And another thing, if you want to make more details in fire, I did this trick in my pyro lessons I created like a few months ago. You can find this lesson too. And there's was a trick when you create a huge large scale smoke simulation with the fire at the ground. There was a forest and I want to create a fire. And I can't create a high detail gradient near the fire because I should add more voxels here. But with a big container like this, I can't add too many voxels because I just don't have enough RAM to calculate it. So I create a simulation with like a mid-res fire, and then create the same simulation with the same source, but without smoke. And when I had a much smaller container, because I don't need to create such a high value for the y-axis because I don't have a smoke justify, I can increase amount of voxels like 2 times more, or even, I don't know, like I create simulation and voxel size 0.2 and then I decrease it to 0.1. So it creates like an 8 time more voxels. And that's how I can create a fire with a bigger amount of detail. And then I just remove the fire from the fast simulation and paste another one. So when I merge those 2 different fires, it creates the same kind of simulation, the same kind of look, but we have a more detailed fire. So we can apply this trick here. If we want to have this fire near the surface, near the water surface, we can apply like another simulation just with the fire, with the same setup for simulation, with the same sourcing, but with a little bit different, turn off the smoke and with a different voxel size. Okay. So, but in this particular case, I want to make another one thing. And as I said, the best choice is add another simulation around the first one just with the smoke. But here I can see that I have a lot of space here in the water surface and it's empty. Well, maybe it's in real life, it could be this, but when we create a CG shot, we don't like a huge amount of empty space. And in this area, we need to add also some additional elements, like maybe some oil stuff on the surface, maybe some part of the ship, I don't know, some debris, some dirt, I don't know, something here, because it's, you know, too many details here and nothing there. So what I want to do, I want to create just a smoke simulation in this area, like, I don't know, what is burning here, maybe it's just an oil or something, just a fuel from this ship or some, I don't know, something which is can burn and it definitely can swim. In fact, it much heavier, much have a different density with the water, so it can be on the surface. So why it can go somewhere here, but with the bigger amount of water, we don't have a fire, we have just a smoke. And near the ship where we have leaking areas, there is more fuel and there we have a fire. So the idea is create some smoke simulation here, but create the rising smoke not just like as in fast simulation, but to blow this in this direction with the biggest speed, so it's moving near the water surface. If we have a huge fire, this means that this smoke has a high temperature. High temperature causes the quick rising and in real life. Okay, so it can't go parallel to surface. But if we have some, I know, objects without a fire, just some source with a smoke, so it has a less temperature, so the smoke is going not such high, it's going on the water surface, and with the wind we can see that it's blowing on this area. That's how we can cover with the smoke some of those fire elements here near the water surface and recreate something like this. So you can see this nice transition between the fire and smoke, and we fill those areas with some smoke here. All right, so before we do that, let's go to the ship. So with the ship, I make some adjustments, and again, playing with some reflection. I want to remove, because it's very, very reflective. It's like, I don't know, from the chrome, it's very, very, I don't know, like a steel, just shiny steel without any scratches or something. So I remove a little bit my reflection, direct reflection, and then I add this reflection back with the screen mode, not plus mode, but I change the color again. You know, when I have the more like red colors in my scene here, so it's looking not too good when we have more yellow color on the ship. So I changed the color from a reflection using the color correction, and apply the contrast and decrease the saturation to make it more red, and add a blur, just a tiny bit, like 0.4 in this case, and make this reflection back to the scene, but not such intense and not such, you know, contrast. So the next grade is filling with the black color, and you can see that, oh, I forget to enable the alpha matte, so I should apply this grade just on the ship, not to the all areas. But the thing is, the light for the ship is different depending on this area. You can see that it's pretty good here in this area, but create a different black color. We can compare this black color and this. So it's a huge difference, but it's almost at the same position. And especially here, where we have a blue tint from the water and like a red tint from this ship. So what I did, I created a few masks, one mask for the middle of the ship, and I create a color correction just for this area. So it's better matching with the background. You can see we have a red dark areas here, and I do the same with the ship. So it's now matching much better here. So how I add this mask, so this is the mask, like an alpha channel, and I grab the alpha channel of the ship, and using the min function, I select just that part of the ship which are under the mask, and then apply color correction just for this area. The same thing I did for the nose, because it's definitely go away from the image. So I apply color correction here. There are some areas with I don't like this blue line, but I will see, maybe I will fill with the smoke a little bit, and I won't see this line, because definitely not too good. I guess it's from here. Yeah, it's a shadow from a ship. Somehow it doesn't looking too good. Yeah, it's like a shadow. So we will see it, maybe fix that, but definitely now I like how it's looking now. It's much better for the color correction. Maybe I should add a little bit of glow somewhere on the ship here. Maybe it's looking better, but it's looking good. This area is much better with some blur on the reflection, so it's not such a you know, shiny and better looking. Maybe I need to make some destruction on the ship, but again, we deal that there is no influence from the ship, so it's just a render element. Okay, so I'm gonna save this project at the moment, and we get back to Houdini to add those additional elements. Another thing I want to do here, I have another like a place with the empty space. Maybe add some additional elements here, maybe with some smoke trails or something, just to, again, to fill the scene. Here, maybe something there, I don't know. We have a background, so I can leave something from my background image, but I think that we can add some smoke, like from another ship or another object, because it's, you know, the background should have another element. So let's keep going.